The encounter. Ethan opened his eyes to the sound of silence, the kind that pressed against his ears and made his heart race. He wasn't in his lab anymore. Instead, he was lying on a cold metal floor in a dimly lit hallway. The walls around him were covered in strange, glowing alien symbols. The air smelled of burnt metal and something faintly sweet, like flowers long dead. He sat up, wincing as his head throbbed with pain. His last memory was working on a project, a big one, something important. But now his mind was blank, like someone had wiped it clean. "Where am I?" he whispered to himself. Before he could gather his thoughts, a voice echoed through the hallway, soft at first, but growing louder, colder. "You were never supposed to remember me, human." Ethan froze. The voice was sharp, almost like a blade slicing through the air. It wasn't human. It was a woman's voice, but there was something alien in its tone, something that sent chills down his spine. "Who's there?" Ethan called out, his voice shaky. No answer came. He got to his feet, his legs trembling, and looked around. The hallway stretched endlessly in both directions, dim lights flickering like dying stars. He noticed scorch marks on the walls and deep scratches on the floor, signs of a battle. As he walked cautiously forward, his foot kicked something. He looked down and saw a pendant lying on the ground. It was small, oval-shaped, and glowing faintly blue. There was something oddly familiar about it, but Ethan couldn't place it. He picked it up, and the moment his fingers touched the cold surface, the voice returned. "You don't deserve to hold that," it hissed. Ethan spun around, but no one was there. The hallway remained empty, yet the voice felt so close, like the speaker was right next to him. "I don't know who you are," Ethan said, his voice firmer now. "But I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to know what's happening." A laugh echoed through the hallway, low and bitter. "You don't know. Typical human. Always so blind to the damage you cause." Before Ethan could respond, the lights in the hallway flickered violently and then went out. He was plunged into darkness. Panic surged in his chest as he reached out blindly, trying to find a wall, a door, anything. Then, a faint glow appeared ahead. A figure stepped out of the darkness, illuminated by the eerie blue light of the pendant in his hand. It was her. She was tall, with silvery skin that shimmered like moonlight and eyes that glowed an intense violet. Her hair, or what looked like hair, moved like liquid shadow around her face. She wasn't human, that much was clear. But there was something hauntingly beautiful about her. "You," she said, her voice dripping with anger. "You destroyed everything. And now you stand here, pretending not to remember." Ethan took a step back, holding up his hands. "I don't know what you're talking about. I swear, I don't remember anything." Her eyes narrowed, glowing brighter. "Liar." The pendant in his hand suddenly burned hot, and Ethan dropped it with a yelp. The woman raised her hand, and the pendant floated into the air, hovering between them. "This," she said, pointing at it, "is all that's left of my people. You held it as if it meant nothing, just like you held my trust." Her words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. "Your people? What happened to them?" She let out a bitter laugh. "What happened? You happened, human. Your experiments, your lies. They killed us. And then you erased me, like I was nothing." Ethan shook his head, trying to process her words. Experiments. Lies? None of it made sense. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said again, desperation creeping into his voice. Her face twisted with rage. "You were meant to forget me. That was part of the plan. But you couldn't erase everything. The truth is still here, buried in your pathetic mind." She took a step closer, and Ethan could feel the heat radiating off her. Her glowing eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, he saw something flicker in them. Pain, sadness, loss. "Who are you?" he asked softly. Her voice dropped to a whisper, filled with venom and sorrow. "I am Zyra, and I will make you remember, even if it kills you." Before Ethan could respond, the station around them shook violently. A deafening alarm blared, and red lights flashed. "What's happening?" Ethan shouted, gripping the wall to steady himself. Zira smirked, her glowing eyes narrowing. "The station is unstable. Let's see how much of your precious memory you can recover before it falls apart." She vanished in a flash of light, leaving Ethan alone as the hallway began to collapse around him. Heart pounding, Ethan clutched the wall and started running. Whatever this place was, whoever Zira was, he needed to survive long enough to find out. The forgotten past. Ethan stood in the ruins of the collapsing station, heart pounding and mind racing. Zira's words echoed in his ears. "You were meant to forget me." He didn't understand, but the venom in her voice wasn't something he could ignore. The pendant he had dropped earlier now lay at his feet, still glowing faintly. He hesitated for a moment, then picked it up again. This time, it didn't burn his hand. Instead, it felt warm, almost alive. "Why do I feel like I know you?" Ethan muttered, staring at the pendant. It pulsed faintly in response, almost as if it could hear him. The station groaned ominously, pulling him back to reality. He needed answers, but first, he had to survive. After what felt like hours of navigating the crumbling structure, Ethan stumbled into a control room. Dust filled the air, and broken screens flickered with static. He hurried to the central console, hoping to find something. Anything that could explain where he was or who Zira was. The console lit up, and a message appeared. "Access restricted. DNA authorization required." Ethan placed his hand on the scanner, not expecting much. To his surprise, the system beeped and granted access. "Welcome, Dr. Ethan Voss," the screen displayed. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He didn't remember ever working here, yet the system recognized him. Files began to open, and as he skimmed through them, a wave of unease washed over him. The first file was a report labeled Project Symbiosis. Ethan clicked it, and a series of images and videos filled the screen. One caught his attention, a recording of himself, standing in a lab, talking to a group of scientists. "This project," the recorded Ethan said, "will unite humanity and alien civilizations in a way never seen before. By merging our memories and emotions, we can bridge the gap of understanding. Zira, our lead subject, has shown remarkable compatibility." Ethan froze. Zira's name struck him like a lightning bolt. She wasn't just an angry alien. She had been part of his work, central to it. The video continued, showing a younger Ethan shaking hands with Zira, who looked hesitant but hopeful. "This can't be real," Ethan whispered, his voice trembling. He couldn't remember any of it. As he dug deeper, another file caught his eye. Incident Report, Day 47. The video showed chaos. Alarms blared, scientists shouted, and Zira was strapped to a machine, writhing in pain. Her screams were otherworldly, filled with anguish. "What's happening?" a panicked voice asked in the recording. "The memory link is unstable," someone else yelled. "Her neural patterns are rejecting the human interface." The video abruptly cut off, replaced by a log entry. Experiment terminated. Subject Zira exhibited extreme emotional distress and hostility. Memory wipe initiated to protect Project Symbiosis integrity. Lead scientist Dr. Ethan Voss authorized the procedure. Ethan staggered back from the screen, his mind spinning. "No, I wouldn't." But the evidence was undeniable. He had authorized wiping Zira's memory, erasing everything she had gone through. Yet now, it seemed her memories had returned, and with them, her rage. Suddenly, the console's screen flickered, and Zira's face appeared. "So, you're finally learning the truth," she said, her voice cold but steady. "Zira," Ethan stammered. "I didn't know. I didn't." "Don't lie to me," Zira interrupted, her glowing violet eyes piercing through the screen. "You erased me, Ethan. You erased us. And for what? Your precious experiment. Your so-called progress. Ethan shook his head, his voice pleading. I don't remember any of this. I don't even remember you. Her expression faltered for a moment, and Ethan thought he saw a flicker of pain. But it was gone as quickly as it came. That's the problem with humans, she said bitterly. You destroy, and then you forget. But I will make you remember, Ethan, even if it kills you. The screen went black. Ethan sat there for a moment, his hands trembling. The weight of the revelations crushed him. He had been part of something monumental, something meant to unite worlds. But instead, it had caused pain and destruction, and Zira blamed him for all of it. Before he could process everything, the console beeped. Another file opened, unprompted. It was a journal entry, written by him. Journal entry, Day 30. Zira is extraordinary. Her mind is unlike anything we've encountered before. She understands human emotions so deeply, almost better than we do ourselves. I think I've grown attached to her in a way that goes beyond science. She trusts me, and I won't betray that trust. This project has to work. For her. For all of us. Ethan's chest tightened. He had cared about Zira. Deeply. But something had gone terribly wrong. The station groaned again, snapping Ethan out of his thoughts. He grabbed the pendant and stood up. Whatever had happened, he needed to find Zira and make things right. As he left the control room, the pendant pulsed in his hand, guiding him forward. Ethan didn't know where it was leading him, but he was determined to follow it, even if it meant facing the wrath of the alien woman who once trusted him. The truth behind the experiment. Ethan followed the faint pulse of the pendant through the ruined corridors of the station. Each step brought him closer to answers, or danger. The air grew heavier, carrying a strange hum that seemed to echo inside his skull. He couldn't shake the feeling that the pendant was alive, guiding him toward something it wanted him to see. As he entered what looked like an old laboratory, the hum grew louder, and the pendant's glow intensified. The room was a wreck. Tables overturned, equipment shattered, and alien glyphs carved into the walls. In the center of the room stood a cylindrical pod, cracked and covered in ash. Ethan approached it cautiously. The pod looked like it had once held someone, or something. A memory tugged at the edge of his mind, blurry and incomplete. This is where it began, he muttered, running his hand over the pod's cold surface. Suddenly, the pendant flared brightly, and the room filled with a holographic projection. Ethan stumbled back as images flickered to life around him. Memories, fragments of the past, playing out like a ghostly performance. The first image showed Ethan standing in the lab, younger and confident. Zira stood opposite him, her silvery skin glowing under the lab's harsh lights. She looked uneasy, but Ethan in the projection was calm, reassuring. This experiment will change everything, the projection Ethan said. You'll be the bridge between our worlds, Zira. You'll be a hero. I don't want to be a hero, Zira replied, her voice softer, hesitant. I just want peace for my people. The scene shifted, dissolving into chaos. Alarms blared, scientists shouted, and Zira was strapped into the pod, her face contorted in agony. It's too much, someone yelled. Her neural pathways are rejecting the link. Shut it down, another voice screamed. But the younger Ethan in the projection hesitated, staring at Zira as if torn between his ambition and her suffering. Don't stop, he finally said. We're so close. The projection faded, and the room fell silent. Ethan stood frozen, his chest tight. What did I do? He whispered. Before he could process the memory, the air shifted. A cold wind seemed to sweep through the room, and Zira's voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere at once. Now you remember, she said, her tone laced with bitterness. Ethan turned, searching for her, but she was nowhere to be seen. Zira, you have to believe me. I don't remember any of this. I didn't know. Her laugh cut him off, sharp and hollow. You didn't know? You led the experiment. You watched as it broke me. And when it failed, you let them erase me. All for your precious science." The pendant in Ethan's hand flared again, and more images appeared. This time, they showed the aftermath of the experiment. Zyra's people, sick and dying, their silvery skin fading to gray. Ethan saw himself arguing with a group of men and women in military uniforms. "She trusted me." "Projection," Ethan said, his voice filled with guilt. "We can't just leave her like this." "She's a liability," one of the officials replied coldly. "The experiment is over, Dr. Voss. Erase her memories and bury the project." "That's an order." The images faded, leaving Ethan alone in the lab. He sank to his knees, his mind reeling. He had betrayed Zyra, not out of malice but out of fear and obedience. Yet the cost of his actions had been unimaginable. "I was trying to help," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "I thought I was doing the right thing." "Your good intentions mean nothing to the dead," Zyra's voice replied, and this time she appeared before him. Her violet eyes burned with anger, but there was also something else: pain, grief, and maybe even the faintest glimmer of hope. Ethan stood, meeting her gaze. "I can't change the past, Zyra, but I can help now. I can fix this." "Fix this." Zyra stepped closer, her presence almost suffocating. "You can't fix what's been destroyed. My people are gone. My world is gone. And you're just a broken man, clinging to pieces of a past you don't even remember." Ethan held up the pendant. "This pendant, it's not just a keepsake, is it? It's a key, isn't it? To something bigger." Zyra's eyes flicked to the glowing object in his hand, and for the first time, her rage seemed to falter. "It's all that's left of my people. Their memories, their essence, and it's mine to protect." "Then let me help you protect it," Ethan said. "Whatever happened back then, whatever I did, I want to make it right." Zyra studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she said, "If you truly want to help, then prove it. The answers you seek aren't here. They're on the planet where this all began." "The planet?" Ethan asked, confused. "What planet?" Zyra's eyes narrowed. "The one you humans call Calyx 7. That's where you'll find the truth. But be warned, Ethan. The truth might not set you free. It might destroy you." Before Ethan could respond, Zyra vanished again, leaving him alone in the ruined lab. The pendant in his hand pulsed more strongly now, as if urging him forward. Ethan took a deep breath and turned toward the exit. He didn't know what awaited him on Calyx 7, but he knew one thing for certain. He owed Zyra and her people answers, and maybe even his life. The pendant's secret. The journey to Calyx 7 was far from smooth. Ethan sat in the cramped cockpit of an aging escape shuttle, his fingers gripping the pendant tightly. It pulsed faintly in his hand, its glow a steady rhythm that seemed to echo the beating of his heart. The ship's systems sputtered and whined, but the autopilot remained locked onto the coordinates Zyra had provided. Through the viewport, Ethan watched the swirling mists of space give way to a planet shrouded in deep green and gray. Calyx 7 loomed large, its surface veined with rivers of molten silver and vast forests that stretched into the horizon. As the shuttle pierced the atmosphere, Ethan braced himself. The craft shuddered violently, alarms blaring as turbulence threatened to tear it apart. "Hold together," he muttered under his breath, gripping the controls. The shuttle finally broke through the clouds and descended into a clearing surrounded by towering trees with bark that shimmered like metal. The landing was rough, barely controlled, but Ethan managed to bring the shuttle to a grinding halt. The moment he stepped outside, the air hit him like a slap. It was thick, heavy with humidity, and carried a strange metallic tang. The ground beneath his feet was soft, almost spongy, and glowed faintly in the dim light. The pendant's glow intensified, tugging Ethan's gaze toward the dense forest. It was leading him somewhere. "All right," he muttered, slipping the pendant around his neck. "Let's see what you want me to find." The forest was alive with sounds. Alien creatures chirped, clicked, and howled in the distance. The trees seemed to shift subtly, their branches swaying in an unseen breeze. Ethan felt like he was being washed, but every time he turned around, there was nothing there. As he pushed deeper into the forest, the pendant's glow became almost blinding. It cast eerie shadows on the trees, illuminating glyphs carved into their trunks. Ethan recognized the symbols. They were the same ones he'd seen in the station and in the lab's projections. "This place," he whispered, brushing his fingers over the carvings. "It's connected to Zira's people." Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, and the pendant pulsed wildly against his chest. Before Ethan could react, the earth split open, and he fell into darkness. Ethan landed hard. The wind knocked out of him. Groaning, he pushed himself up and looked around. He was in a cavern, its walls lined with crystals that glowed faintly blue. The air was cooler here, and the hum was louder, resonating in his chest. The pendant tugged him forward, its glow synchronized with the crystals around him. Ethan followed it deeper into the cavern until he reached a massive door carved from the same crystalline material. The door was inscribed with glyphs, but these were different, more intricate, more deliberate. Ethan traced the symbols with his fingers, and as he did, the pendant flared brightly. "Accessing core memory," a voice said, startling him. It wasn't Zira's voice. It was mechanical, cold, and detached. The door began to open, and Ethan stepped back as a surge of light spilled into the cavern. Beyond the door was a vast chamber, its walls covered in holographic displays. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it rested a device that looked like a small crystalline sphere. Ethan approached cautiously, the pendant pulling him toward the sphere. As he reached out to touch it, the pendant and the sphere resonated together, filling the chamber with a brilliant light. Suddenly, Ethan's mind was flooded with memories, not his own, but Zira's. He saw her homeworld, a place of shimmering silver oceans and skies filled with glowing orbs. He saw her people, their faces filled with hope as they welcomed the humans who came to forge an alliance. Then he saw the experiments. The humans, led by a younger version of himself, promised unity and understanding. But as the experiments continued, Zira's people began to suffer. The neural link drained their energy, their emotions, their very essence. He saw Zira confront him, her eyes filled with tears. "You said this would save us," she had pleaded. "You said we'd be stronger together." And he saw himself hesitate, torn between the project's promise and the reality of its cost. "I'll fix this," he had said, his voice uncertain. "I just need more time." But there was no time. The sabotage, the forced memory wipe, and the abandonment of Zira's people had followed. Ethan felt her pain, her anger, her betrayal, and then nothing. The memory stopped abruptly, and Ethan fell to his knees, gasping for air. The light dimmed, and the chamber grew silent. As he regained his composure, Zira appeared in the chamber, her presence as imposing as ever. "So now you know," she said, her voice cold. Ethan looked up at her, tears in his eyes. "I didn't know they sabotaged it. I didn't know what it would cost." "You knew enough," she replied, her tone sharp. "You chose to push forward, no matter the cost. My people trusted you, Ethan. I trusted you." He stood, the pendant still glowing faintly against his chest. "I can't change the past, Zira, but I can help you now. There's something bigger happening here, something they didn't want either of us to find." Zira's eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. "What are you talking about?" Ethan gestured to the sphere. This isn't just a memory archive. It's a key. Your people left it here for a reason. We need to find out why." Zira hesitated, her anger flickering with doubt. "If you're lying to me, I'll end you myself." "I'm not lying," Ethan said firmly. "But if we're going to find the truth, we have to work together." Zira stared at him for a long moment before finally nodding. "Then let's begin. But remember, human, trust is earned, not given. As the pendant and sphere pulsed in unison, Ethan and Zira prepared to uncover the secrets of the past and face whatever waited for them in the depths of Calyx 7. The chase. The crystalline chamber on Calyx 7 collapsed into chaos. The moment Ethan and Zira activated the pendant and sphere, the entire cavern began to rumble, cracks snaking across the walls as the ground beneath them shifted violently. The hum that had once been a low resonance was now a deafening roar, as if the planet itself was coming alive. Ethan stumbled backward, shielding his eyes as the sphere exploded into a burst of light. "What did we just do?" he shouted over the noise. Zira didn't answer. Her glowing violet eyes were fixed on the hologram swirling around them, projections of symbols, maps, and what looked like a star chart. Her expression hardened as she recognized the pattern. "It's a distress signal," she said, her voice grim. "We've triggered something ancient, and not all who answer will be friendly." Before Ethan could ask what she meant, the ground gave way beneath them. He felt himself falling, the air rushing past him as the chamber caved in. He hit the ground hard, the pendant around his neck pulsing wildly. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was lying on the forest floor again. The sky above him was no longer calm. It churned with dark clouds streaked with electric blue lightning. Zira stood nearby, her silvery skin glowing faintly in the dim light. "You're awake," she said without looking at him. "What happened?" Ethan groaned, sitting up. "The signal reached its destination," Zira replied, her tone sharp. "And now they're coming." Ethan followed her gaze and felt his stomach drop. High above the planet, the sky was filling with ships, sleek, angular vessels that descended like hunting predators. They were unlike anything he'd ever seen, with dark, jagged designs that seemed to absorb the light around them. "Who are they?" Ethan asked, panic creeping into his voice. Zira's jaw tightened. "Scavengers. Mercenaries. Some call them the Voidborn. They come for power, for destruction. And they never leave survivors." Ethan scrambled to his feet. "We have to get out of here." Zira turned to him, her eyes blazing. "And go where?" "They've already locked onto the signal. They won't stop until they find it, or us." The sound of engines grew louder as one of the Voidborn ships broke through the clouds, descending rapidly toward the clearing. Zira grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him into the cover of the trees. "Move, human," she snapped. They ran, the dense forest around them a blur. The ground shook as the ship landed behind them, and a squad of dark figures emerged. The Voidborn were humanoid but unnervingly tall, their armor gleaming black and their faces obscured by helmets with glowing red visors. Ethan glanced back, his breath catching as one of the figures raised a weapon, a long, curved device that crackled with energy. Zira shoved him forward. "Don't look back. Keep running." The Voidborn opened fire, and the forest erupted in chaos. Trees exploded into shards of metal and wood as the blasts tore through them. Ethan and Zira darted between the trunks, dodging debris, and leaping over roots that seemed to rise from the ground to trip them. They finally reached a narrow ravine, its edges steep and treacherous. Zira stopped, scanning the terrain. "We can't outrun them forever," Ethan panted, clutching his side. "What's the plan?" Zira didn't answer immediately. Her gaze fell on the pendant around Ethan's neck, and a flicker of determination crossed her face. "They're not here just for the signal," she said. "They want the pendant. It's the key to what's hidden on this planet." Ethan's eyes widened. "What's hidden?" Zira's expression darkened. "A weapon. One my people sealed away long ago, when we realized its power was too great to control. The Voidborn think they can use it to dominate the galaxy." Ethan swallowed hard. "And what happens if they get it?" Zira's voice was cold. "Then everything dies." The sound of the Voidborn grew closer, their heavy footsteps echoing through the forest. Zira grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled him toward the edge of the ravine. "We have to cross," she said. Ethan stared at the gap. "Are you insane?" That's... Before he could finish, Zyra leaped effortlessly across, landing gracefully on the other side. She turned back, her expression impatient. Jump, human, or they'll kill you where you stand. Ethan hesitated for only a moment before taking a deep breath and jumping. His landing wasn't nearly as graceful. He hit the ground hard, rolling to a stop at Zyra's feet. "Not bad," she said dryly, pulling him up. As they moved deeper into the forest, the pendant's glow grew brighter, pulsing in time with the increasingly frantic hum in the air. Zyra seemed to know where they were headed, her steps purposeful even as the Voidborn closed in. "Where are we going?" Ethan asked, struggling to keep up. "To the heart of the planet," Zyra replied. "That's where the weapon is buried, and where we'll find the answers we need." Ethan frowned. "How do you know all this?" Zyra's expression was unreadable. "Because I helped bury it." Before Ethan could press further, a deafening roar filled the air. One of the Voidborn ships had caught up with them, its engines kicking up a gale as it hovered above the forest. Zyra grabbed Ethan and pulled him into a crevice between two large rocks. "Stay down," she hissed. The Voidborn deployed a squad of drones, sleek black machines that fanned out across the forest, scanning for life signs. One of the drones hovered dangerously close to their hiding spot, its red eye flickering as it scanned the area. Ethan held his breath, his heart hammering in his chest. Zyra's hand tightened around the hilt of a blade at her side, her muscles coiled like a spring. The drone moved on, its hum fading into the distance. Zyra exhaled quietly and motioned for Ethan to follow her. As they emerged from the crevice, the pendant pulsed even brighter, casting a glow that lit up the trees around them. "We're close," Zyra said, her voice low. Ethan looked around nervously. "Close to what?" Zyra's gaze was fixed ahead, to a decision. Ethan didn't understand what she meant, but he didn't have time to ask. The Voidborn were closing in, and whatever awaited them at the heart of Calyx 7 might be their only chance to survive. The unexpected ally. Ethan and Zyra emerged from the dense forest into a vast clearing. The ground here was different, smooth, metallic, and covered with intricate alien glyphs that pulsed faintly underfoot. The pendant around Ethan's neck glowed brighter than ever, illuminating the clearing with an otherworldly light. "This is it," Zyra said, her voice low but steady. "The entrance to the vault." "The vault?" Ethan asked, catching his breath. "It's where the weapon was sealed," Zyra replied, her eyes scanning the horizon. "And where we'll either find salvation or our end." Before Ethan could respond, a deafening roar echoed behind them. The Voidborn ships had closed the distance, their angular forms blotting out the sky as they descended into the clearing. Dozens of armored figures disembarked, their weapons humming with lethal energy. Zyra drew her blade, the silver edge shimmering in the glow of the pendant. "Stay behind me." "Stay behind you," Ethan snapped, glancing nervously at the advancing Voidborn. "There are dozens of them." "You're welcome to run," Zyra shot back, her tone sharp. "But I doubt you'd get far." The Voidborn surrounded them, their leader stepping forward. Unlike the others, this figure's armor was engraved with jagged red symbols, and his helmet bore a crown of spikes. Hand over the pendant, the leader growled, his voice distorted and mechanical. "Do that, and I'll consider letting you die quickly." Zyra stepped forward, her blade raised. "You'll have to kill me first." The Voidborn leader laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "That can be arranged." He raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the ground beneath them trembled violently. The glyphs on the metallic surface flared to life, emitting a blinding light. "What's happening?" Ethan shouted, shielding his eyes. "The vault is responding to the pendant," Zyra yelled back. The ground split open, and a massive structure rose from beneath the clearing. It was a tower of crystalline material, spiraling toward the sky and glowing with the same blue light as the pendant. The Voidborn hesitated, their formation breaking as they stared at the emerging structure in awe. Zyra didn't wait. She lunged at the nearest Voidborn, her blade slicing through their armor with precision. Ethan stumbled backward, trying to stay out of the chaos as the clearing erupted into a full-scale battle. Blasts of energy lit up the sky, and the Voidborn fired wildly, trying to regroup. Zira moved like a shadow, her movements fluid and deadly, but even she couldn't hold them off forever. "Ethan," she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. "Get to the tower. The pendant will guide you." "What about you?" Ethan called back, panic rising in his chest. "I'll hold them off," Zira said firmly. "Go." Ethan hesitated for a moment, then turned and ran toward the towering structure. The pendant around his neck pulsed faster, its glow leading him to a narrow entrance at the base of the tower. Inside, the air was cool and silent, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. The walls of the tower were lined with holographic panels displaying alien symbols and images. As Ethan stepped forward, the pendant flared, and a voice echoed through the chamber. "Access granted. Welcome, Keeper." "Keeper?" Ethan muttered, confused. The room shifted around him, and a holographic figure appeared. It was tall and humanoid, with features similar to Zira's but more ethereal. Its eyes glowed a soft white, and its voice was calm, almost soothing. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, taking a cautious step forward. "I am the Sentinel," the figure replied, "a guardian of the vault and its secrets." Ethan glanced at the pendant. "What is this? Why does everyone want it?" "The pendant is a key," the Sentinel explained. "It contains the essence of Zira's people and the coordinates to the weapon buried within this vault." "A weapon?" Ethan repeated, his stomach sinking. "Yes," the Sentinel said, "but it is not what you believe. It is not a tool of destruction, but a tool of restoration, a way to undo the damage caused by the failed experiments." Ethan's mind raced. "You mean it can bring Zira's people back?" The Sentinel's expression remained unreadable. "In a way. The weapon is a device that can rewrite neural patterns on a massive scale, restoring memories and repairing broken connections. But it requires two things to activate: the pendant and a willing host." Before Ethan could process this revelation, the walls trembled, and the sound of explosions echoed from outside. The Voidborn were trying to breach the tower. The Sentinel's voice grew urgent. "You must decide quickly, Keeper. If the Voidborn take the pendant, they will corrupt the device and turn it into a weapon of unimaginable destruction." "What do I have to do?" Ethan asked, his voice shaking. "You must link your neural patterns with the device," the Sentinel said. "Your connection to Zira and your role in the experiments make you the only viable host." Ethan's heart pounded. "And if I don't?" "The Voidborn will take control," the Sentinel replied, "and all hope for redemption will be lost." At that moment, Zira stumbled into the chamber, blood streaking her silvery skin. She was breathing hard, but her eyes still burned with determination. "They're coming," she said, her voice strained. "Whatever you're doing, do it fast." Ethan turned to her, the weight of the decision crushing him. "Zira, this device, it can bring your people back, but it needs me too." "I know," Zira interrupted, her expression unreadable. "The Sentinel explained it to me before." Ethan stared at her. "You knew, and you didn't tell me." "There was no point," Zira said. "You didn't remember who you were, or what you did, until now." Ethan swallowed hard, guilt washing over him. "Zira, if this works, I'll do everything I can to make things right. But if it doesn't..." Zira stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "Just don't let them win." Before Ethan could respond, the chamber door burst open, and the Voidborn leader stormed in, his weapon raised. "Enough of this," the leader growled. "The pendant. Now." Ethan glanced at Zira, then at the Sentinel. The pendant pulsed one last time, and Ethan made his decision. He stepped onto the platform at the center of the chamber, clutching the pendant tightly. "If this is what it takes," he said, his voice steady, Then let's finish this. The sentinel nodded, and the room filled with light as the vault's power came to life. The final confrontation. The vault chamber blazed with light as the pendant fused into Ethan's chest, sending waves of energy coursing through his body. He gasped, clutching the platform for support as memories, his own and Zyra's, flooded his mind. The sentinel's voice echoed in the chamber, calm yet firm. Neural synchronization initiated. You are now the keeper. The Voidborn leader roared in anger, raising his weapon to fire. Zyra, though battered and exhausted, lunged forward with her blade, intercepting the shot. Sparks flew as their weapons clashed, but the leader's strength forced her to her knees. You're too late, the Voidborn growled, pushing Zyra back. Ethan opened his eyes, now glowing with the same blue light as the pendant. His voice was layered, almost alien. No, you are. The chamber trembled as the vault responded to Ethan's activation. Pulses of energy rippled outward, knocking the Voidborn soldiers off their feet. The leader turned to Ethan, his red visor glowing with fury. What have you done? I've unlocked the vault's true purpose, Ethan said, stepping off the platform. And it's not what you think. The Voidborn soldiers scrambled to their feet, firing their weapons, but the vault's defenses came alive. Crystalline walls shimmered and expanded, forming barriers of light that absorbed the attacks. The sentinel appeared as a projection, its calm presence a stark contrast to the chaos. This is a place of restoration, it said, not destruction. Those who seek to corrupt it will face its wrath. The Voidborn leader snarled and charged at Ethan, his weapon crackling with energy. But Ethan raised his hand, and the energy dissipated before it could reach him. The power of the vault flowed through him, amplifying his abilities. You're not taking this, Ethan said firmly. The leader hesitated, clearly unnerved, but his hesitation didn't last long. He barked an order to his soldiers, who regrouped and began targeting the vault's defenses instead. They're trying to destabilize the system, Zyra shouted, slashing through another soldier. Ethan glanced at the sentinel. What happens if they succeed? The energy within the vault will collapse, the sentinel replied. The resulting explosion will annihilate everything within 100 light years. Ethan's stomach dropped. That's not an option. The pendant glowed brighter as Ethan stepped forward, focusing on the Voidborn. The vault's energy pulsed around him, responding to his will. He reached out, and the crystalline walls expanded further, trapping some of the soldiers in cages of light. The Voidborn leader roared, breaking through one of the barriers with brute force. He locked eyes with Ethan, his rage palpable. You think you can stop me? The leader spat. This power belongs to no one. It doesn't belong to you, Ethan shot back. It belongs to those who lost everything. Zyra's people, the ones your kind would erase for your greed. The leader charged again, but this time, Ethan didn't step back. He raised both hands, and a wave of energy surged forward, slamming into the leader and sending him crashing into the far wall. Zyra approached Ethan, her breathing heavy. You're controlling it, she said, a mix of awe and suspicion in her voice. I think it's controlling me too, Ethan admitted, his voice still layered with the vault's energy. But it's showing me what to do. He turned to the sentinel. You said the weapon restores. How do we use it? The sentinel gestured toward a crystalline console that rose from the floor. The device requires the pendant's essence and a living host to activate its full potential. But be warned, this process will bind the host to the vault forever. You will become its guardian, unable to leave. Ethan's heart sank. He had only just started to understand his role in this. Could he really sacrifice his freedom to fix what he had broken? Before he could answer, Zyra stepped forward. No, she said firmly. This isn't just your burden, Ethan. What are you talking about? Ethan asked, turning to her. I was the one who trusted you, Zyra said, her voice heavy with emotion. I was the one who believed in this project, even when my people doubted. If anyone should stay, it's me. No, Ethan said, shaking his head. You've suffered enough because of me. I need to do this. Their argument was cut short by another explosion. The Voidborn leader had regained his footing and was aiming a massive, unstable weapon directly at the console. If I can't have it, he snarled, then no one will. Zira reacted instantly, throwing her blade with precision. It struck the weapon, causing it to misfire and explode in the leader's hands. The force of the blast sent him flying, and he landed motionless against the wall. But the console had been damaged. Sparks flew, and the vault's energy became erratic. The system is destabilizing, the sentinel warned. Immediate activation is required to prevent collapse. Ethan and Zira exchanged a look. There was no time for further debate. You trust me now? Ethan asked. Zira hesitated, then nodded. I trust you. Ethan stepped onto the console platform, the pendant glowing with blinding intensity. He placed his hand on the console, and the energy of the vault surged through him. The chamber filled with light as the vault activated. Ethan felt his consciousness expand, connecting with the memories of Zira's people, their pain, their hope, their legacy. The energy flowed outward, restoring the neural patterns that had been lost, reawakening what had been buried for centuries. Outside, the Voidborn ships were thrown back by the surge of energy. The soldiers who survived fled, their leader's failure clear. The forest began to heal, its metallic bark regaining its shimmer, its glow brighter than ever. As the light faded, Ethan stood alone on the platform, his body transformed. His eyes glowed permanently, and his voice carried the resonance of the vault. It's done, he said, his voice calm but heavy with finality. Zira approached, her expression a mixture of sadness and gratitude. You did it. My people, they're at peace now. Ethan smiled faintly. And the vault is safe. But I can't leave, Zira. I'm part of it now. She reached out, placing her hand on his. Then you've given me a second chance, Ethan. I won't waste it. As Zira stepped out of the vault, the skies above Calyx 7 cleared, and the world began to heal. Ethan watched her go, knowing he would never leave, but also knowing that for the first time, he had made the right choice. The vault sealed itself behind her, its glow a testament to the lives it had saved, and to the keeper who had sacrificed everything to protect it.